You do not lose money because you are unlucky. You lose money because you keep believing the wrong story about where money actually comes from. And the cold part is this: most of the people telling you how to get rich are not lying about effort. They are lying about leverage. They are selling you motivation while they quietly monetize the fact that you do not understand how payments really happen. This is not financial advice. This is financial education. In 2026, with AI hollowing out middle-class work, with housing prices separating from wages, with inflation that did not truly go away inside your budget, you need to understand something brutal about money and power. Money does not flow to the person with the nicest resume. Money flows to the person who can convert attention, desire, and fear into payment on demand. By the end of this, you will know what sales really is, why the modern economy rewards the wrong behaviors, and how to stop treating earning money like it is a mystery you are supposed to network your way through. And no, you will not need to become a used car magician. You will need a different operating system. Let me start with a question you probably never asked out loud. Where does income come from in the place where you work? Not revenue, not growth, not synergy, I mean the mechanical path. What exact human action creates the money that pays your paycheck, your benefits, and your boss's bonus? If you can answer that, you can see the truth you were trained to ignore. Most roles do not generate income. They manage costs, reduce risk, or execute work that supports the people who actually touch the customer's decision. Some roles are valuable, sure. But valuable is not the same thing as revenue generating. Valuable does not always mean it gets paid in direct proportion to value. Now watch how this becomes depressing in real life. You might work at a large company and see executives making over $100,000 a year, maybe even several million if you are in the United States. People look at that salary and think, wow, that must be where the money comes from. But in most organizations, those top executives are not selling to customers. They are not collecting payment. Their job is to allocate resources and manage the machine. Here is the part nobody wants to say plainly. In many businesses, the people who truly create income are the revenue collectors. The rest of the company is mostly a cost center with different job titles. AI makes this even uglier. The reason AI threatens jobs is not that it is smart, it is that it is cheap. It takes the middle layers of execution and compresses them. An AI system can write sales emails, draft landing pages, analyze leads, and even generate product copy that converts. That means roles that were once protected by how hard it is to do are suddenly exposed as replaceable. So if your skill set is execution without direct payment authority, you are not insulated, you are just delayed. And while you are worrying about AI, executives are worrying about something else. They are worrying about cash conversion cycles. They are worrying about whether their top line can be defended. They are worrying about whether they need more distribution. Because when the world tightens and interest rates stay high, or when insurance costs collapse coverage, or when climate events force people to relocate, businesses get hungry for revenue. They do not get hungry for your feelings about how fair things should be, which brings me to the first dark truth about wealth. There is a reason the early stage rich entrepreneurs you see in documentaries always look like they were selling something. They do not start with product perfection, they start with payment extraction. In the earliest stage, money is the fuel, and you do not have time to build a perfect story. In my experience, the most successful founders in the real world are obsessed with one question above all others. How do I get money into the business today, not someday? Not, how do I build the best brand? Not, how do I create the highest value today? They want the customer's dollars to move. They want the transaction to happen. They want to understand why someone reaches into their wallet at the moment of maximum doubt. And if you do not understand that, you can be a genius and still fail. Because a perfect product with no payment path is just a hobby. Picture a 32-year-old nurse named David. He works overtime because his apartment rent jumped again. He does not have a lot of money saved, but he wants stability. One day he hears an online pitch about passive income and building an AI-enabled app. He buys a course, spends weeks building, and then he runs into the part nobody mentions. People do not pay because you made something. People pay when they feel a problem will get solved or a benefit will happen. David built an app that tracked health habits. Useful, maybe, but nobody needed it enough to pay. He did not do the boring work of learning who has the pain, why they fear it, and what outcome would justify their spending. After a few months, he shuts it down, even though the work was good. Now contrast him with a person who does not have talent in a traditional sense, but knows how to sell. That person hears David's problem about rent and instability and instantly thinks, okay, who pays for solutions to that fear? They do not ask, how do we make a better app? They ask, how do we close the gap between fear and action? In 2026, AI makes this more urgent, because the learn-to-code advice from the early AI boom era is now a cruel joke for most people. AI codes better than many humans, so the market does not reward everyone for copying the skill. It rewards the people who can convert the attention AI creates into money. That is sales, even if you call it marketing, growth, partnerships, or strategy. So let's strip away the myths. When most people hear sales, they picture a person cornering them in a mall, or a caller pressuring them, or a slick presentation that feels like a scam. They hate it because they assume the seller is lying. They assume the seller only cares about extracting money, not solving a problem. But here is where the truth gets even darker. Most sellers behave like they deserve your contempt. They talk about the product like the product is the point. They dump features. They treat you like a spreadsheet. Then they wonder why people hesitate. Because you never bought the thing. You bought relief. You bought the feeling that your pain will stop, your risk will shrink, your future will look less terrifying, your family will be safe, your time will be recovered, your dignity will return. This is not a motivational idea. This is how transactions work. A product is not the reason someone pays. A product is the container for the outcome. Think about your last doctor visit. The doctor does not sprint after you waving a pill bottle, begging you to buy. The doctor listens, diagnoses the problem, explains the risk of not treating it, then offers a treatment path. The doctor is not selling medicine. The doctor is selling a reduction in uncertainty and a path to getting better. And you did not pay because you wanted a pill. You paid because you wanted health. Now we are going to apply that to money, because money is the language that rules everything else. Sales is not selling products. Sales is solving a problem. The product is the excuse that makes the transaction possible. And here is the second dark truth. Most people who say they want to make money are still thinking like hobbyists. They think the product matters most. They think the pitch matters most. They think charm matters most. But in reality, the first thing that determines whether someone pays is whether you discovered the buyer's pain accurately enough that they feel you understand them. Pain is the ignition system. Emotion is the fuel, logic is the steering wheel. But if you never identify the underlying pain, you are pushing a boulder uphill forever. Now you might ask, okay, so how do I find pain? You do not need a gift. You do not need a silver tongue. You need a questioning method that forces clarity instead of guessing. Most people use what I call a straight line transaction mindset. They answer whatever the customer asks. Customer asks, do you have it? Seller says, yes. Customer asks, how much? Seller says, it costs $30. Customer asks for the item and pays, and the seller goes home proud. That can work if the customer already has full clarity and already decided. But if the customer is uncertain, straight line sales collapses. It collapses because the seller becomes a human vending machine. You press buttons and deliver options. Meanwhile, the customer's real problem stays hidden, buried under fear and confusion. This is why so many jobs are becoming unstable in 2026. Not only are roles being automated, roles that used to be protected by time and muscle are now replaced by systems that ask better questions. AI can do scripted follow-ups. AI can segment customers. It can read patterns. It can predict objections before you even hear them. If you are not learning the skill of discovery, you are just doing the parts that can be replicated. So let's do it the real way. When someone asks you if you have a product, your first response should not be yes and a price tag. Your first response should be a mirror that forces them to reveal why they are here. Your job is to turn a vague desire into a specific need. Ask the question behind the question. Not to be nosy, to be useful. When the customer says they want something, you ask what problem they are trying to solve, what they have tried already, what they are worried about, and what better would look like. In marketing language, you are diagnosing. In sales language, you are qualifying. In financial language, you are determining whether there is enough urgency to justify payment. And urgency is everything, especially when the world is under financial stress. In the last few years, interest rates and inflation created a new baseline of anxiety for ordinary people. The Fed can raise rates to fight inflation, but real purchasing power takes longer to recover than anyone wants to admit. Housing affordability has been crushed across the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. People are not only paying higher monthly costs, they are paying higher stress for years. When you sell in that environment, you are not selling products, You are selling stability, control, and reduced uncertainty. You are selling the idea that someone might not drown. But most sellers still behave like it is 2016 and people are relaxed. Now let me give you a concrete example using a scenario you have seen in every grocery store. Imagine an older man walking with his grandchild. A store employee offers yogurt samples. The employee says, "Try this yogurt, it is delicious, we have a promotion." The employee never asks what the grandchild's digestive problems are, never checks whether the child is underfed or refusing food, never explains why this yogurt might solve a specific discomfort. So the grandpa tries a spoonful, shrugs, and walks away. No transaction, no learning, no diagnosis. Now imagine a different employee, same yogurt, same shelf. The second employee says something like, "Your grandson looks a little thin. Does he ever complain about stomach discomfort? Or is he having trouble with regular bowel movements?" Then they pause long enough for the grandpa to answer. The employee listens. Then the employee says, "It sounds like you are worried about digestion and absorption, not just taste. This yogurt is designed for that kind of support." Notice what happened. The second employee did not sell yogurt. The employee sold a belief that the yogurt is relevant to the child's problem. If you have ever worked in a family business, you know how quickly people respond when you finally speak their language. Not your language, their language. That is the skill. Finding the real pain and making the customer feel understood enough to trust the next step. Now comes the third dark truth, and it is where the wealth concentration accelerates. Even if you diagnose pain perfectly, people will still try to bargain if you only offer logic. If you only talk benefits, you become easy to compare. Price becomes the only battleground. So the highest earners learn to sell with tiers. One tier is function. It answers the question, what does it do? Another tier is emotion. It answers the question, what does it mean to me? The third tier is economics. It answers the question, how does this affect my money, my time, my risk, my future budget? Most people fail because they live only in the first tier. They talk features, they talk specs, they talk quality. Meanwhile, their customer is thinking about identity, relationships, fear, and survival. In 2026, survival is not dramatic like in movies. It is quiet. It is the fear that your savings will not last, the fear that your rent will rise again, the fear that your job will be replaced by AI, the fear that your health insurance will become unpayable, the fear that climate disruptions will force a move and you will lose everything you built. So when you sell, you need to connect the solution to the customer's emotional reality. If you are selling a product that helps digestion, the function is digestion. The emotion is caring. The emotion is pride. The emotion is relief when the child eats again. The emotion is being the person who fixes things for your family. Function alone says, "Here is a yogurt." Emotion says, "This yogurt helps your grandchild feel better and you get to stop worrying." And then economics turns the conversation into payment. Economics is the part most good people hate because it makes money explicit. But ignoring economics is how you get underpaid. Economics is the part that says, this is worth the money because it prevents a worse outcome, or because it saves you time, or because it reduces a recurring cost. And in 2026, with global debt over $300 trillion and with government budgets under strain, people are more sensitive to recurring costs. They are not just buying once, they are buying a future pattern. They are asking, will this keep costing me, or will it stabilize my life? Now for the next cliffhanger, because this is where most scripts stop, and the world gets ugly. You might think, okay, so I need to diagnose pain and then package it in emotion and economics. But that only explains how transactions happen. It does not explain why the system feels rigged. Here is the uncomfortable connection. The same skill that lets a great salesperson close deals is the skill that lets institutions take control of the public's money. In 2026, that shows up everywhere. Crypto was sold as freedom from banks, yet institutional investors and regulated entities own more of the crypto infrastructure than retail users ever did. Retail got the story about decentralization. Institutions got the leverage about liquidity, market access, and regulation. The sales techniques never disappeared, they evolved. The wealthiest actors do not rely on technical genius, they rely on conversion. They rely on capturing attention and transforming it into assets they control. And while the average person is panicking about AI replacing jobs, the top 1% keeps doing what they have always done. They collect income. They borrow against assets. They invest in distribution channels. They structure tax outcomes. They turn uncertainty into a business model. Meanwhile, you were told to save more. You were told to invest in the market. You were told to learn a new skill. But the deeper truth is this: if you do not understand how money is harvested, you become a customer instead of a producer. And being a customer is not neutral. In housing, for example, the relationship between wages and prices has broken in a way that looks permanent for many cities. You can earn more and still lose. You can work harder and still rent forever. The pain is not only the rent payment. The pain is the status you cannot reach. The pain is the dream collapsing into a monthly transfer to someone else's asset. So when a system wants to keep you paying, it does not need to lie to you in a cartoon way. It just needs to keep you unsure, keep you busy, keep you comparing. It needs to make you believe that your problem is personal weakness instead of market design. And the evidence of market design is everywhere. When the stock market hits new highs while real people feel poorer, the disconnect is not an accident. It is a distribution problem. It is who owns financial assets and who does not. It is who benefits from liquidity conditions and who gets priced out of survival. The question is not why you feel it. The question is why the sales machine keeps telling you comfort stories. So now I want to take you to the next layer. How great sellers price and why most pricing strategies are just psychological traps. If you are selling something and people immediately ask your lowest price, your first instinct might be to list it quickly. You might think, if they ask price, just give the number. That mindset destroys revenue because it makes you negotiate on your customers' terms. The best sellers do something counterintuitive. They ask reverse questions. When a customer says, "How much is the window?" Instead of answering immediately, they shift to understanding. They acknowledge taste, but then they qualify purpose. They ask what the buyer wants it to do, for whom it is being used, and what constraints matter. Sometimes it is about the installation timeline. Sometimes it is about budget. Sometimes it is about identity. What does this home represent? But the point is to turn an arbitrary product discussion into a tailored outcome. When you tailor outcomes, price stops being an argument and becomes a justification. In 2026, this matters because people are not just buying goods, they are buying protection against expensive mistakes. With AI-driven job displacement and rising insurance costs, the customer is thinking about avoiding catastrophe, not optimizing a spreadsheet. So you can frame price with confidence, but confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is clarity. Confidence is knowing you have understood the buyer's pain and you have mapped your solution to it. Now here is where the emotional manipulation gets real, and I will say it carefully because you can use it ethically or you can use it to scam people. Either way, it works. Retailers sell you not only products but also meaning. Starbucks sells you the feeling of a break. Fashion sells you social status. Credit cards sell you convenience and the story that you are in control. Streaming services sell you the illusion that time is cheap, and social media sells you the fantasy of passive income while most people earn nothing. Creator economy content is a perfect example. Thousands of people post videos promising freedom. In reality, most creators make $0. Even when they get views, the money is fragmented into ad revenue that is volatile, brand deals that are selective, and affiliate income that depends on traffic that disappears. So the question becomes brutal. Who is actually monetizing the audience? Usually the platform. Usually advertisers, sometimes the top creators, rarely the average person. And that is why you should stop thinking of being online as a direct path to wealth. Being online is being harvested. Your attention is the raw material. The platform sells access to advertisers. Your engagement becomes someone else's distribution advantage. Now remember Edison and the light bulb, because it connects directly to this. A light bulb itself is not a monopoly idea. Anyone can create bulbs, but electricity networks, generation, transmission, and control of infrastructure turn a simple object into a recurring payment system. Edison did not just sell bulbs, he sold an empire of payments. That is why the product part is always the surface story. The deeper story is infrastructure and payment control. In 2026, the same logic applies to credit, to health systems, to housing finance, to energy, and to data-driven advertising. Whoever controls distribution and payment rails can extract wealth even when the product is not that special. So what does this mean for you right now, watching this at 2 a.m., worried about AI and inflation and rent? It means your real advantage is not your ability to work hard. You already work hard. Most people do. Your advantage is whether you can learn the skill of conversion, how to recognize pain, communicate a solution, and create trust strong enough that a transaction becomes the logical next step for the buyer. And since we are being honest, learning this changes everything about your future.